reached agreement on a one-year, $55 million contract extension. It could be worth up to $60 million next year with incentives, about $5 million in incentives each year. Basically, he now has 2 years left on his contract instead of just the one. And if he hits all the incentives, plays both years, he can make $105 million over the next 2 years. Kevin, I don't know if you remember, but the Rams took a quarterback in the first round of this year's draft. What does the Stafford extension tell you about their plans?
Well, first of all, very few people are above Matthew Stafford's pay grade. Let's get that out of the way. He can't say that in a press conference if he doesn't like something. But I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing a guy who's probably the best quarterback in football right now, and it just reinforces how much I don't like the Ty Simpson pick. This is a franchise that went all in. That was the big phrase, all in to win a Super Bowl a couple years ago. They were able to take their cap medicine, retool, and compete for a Super Bowl again. And now is the time, on the cusp of winning another Super Bowl, to start planning for 2028. I just don't like it. I thought Mekhi Lemon was a better option. I thought any of the skill guys there. You had tight ends on the board. They apparently want to put 8 tight ends at once out there. Maybe take one of those guys in the first round. I just didn't like, at that point, future-proofing your franchise when I think you're the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. I don't like it. This contract is well-deserved, but it just reinforces how much I don't like the pick.
Yeah, the contract, which I agree is very well deserved, to me just emphasizes how good this team is, that the team knows how good it is, and it does, as Kevin said, make the draft pick a little bit puzzling, and not even just because of, the skill players that they could have had who could have contributed immediately, like Mekhi Lemon, but for me, it's just about mitigating risk. Devontae Adams is on the other side of 30. If he misses any games this year, and we saw points last year, they were able to survive it, but you really want to go in without wide receiver depth or the offensive lineman. Stafford is phenomenal, but his play does decline under pressure, as often the case with older quarterbacks. If the Rams were to lose an offensive tackle, do you think they would have wished they had drafted another lineman, for example, in the first round? So it just feels to me like the roster is fine. The roster is great. But players get hurt in the NFL, and I can't help but wonder, come December, if we'd be having a different conversation.
Very intrigued to see the Rams play 5 tight ends at the same time if Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams are not available this upcoming season. The only thing I would add, and I'm not arguing with what you guys said, but this is an organization that we know is very comfortable and very aggressive, either trading for players or trying to trade for players in season. We saw them try to trade for Christian McCaffrey a couple years ago. They offered 2 first-round picks and even more, reportedly, for Brian Burns. They're willing to make that big deal if they felt like they needed something to go over the top. So I would just say, let's be a little patient, see what happens at the trade deadline. If they do have a tackle go down, if they do have a wide receiver get hurt, if they need something, I feel very confident Leslie can go and trade picks next year. And one of the reasons why he can is because he has that quarterback he feels like he has for the future.
And just to be clear, just talking to people today, sources about the Stafford deal, they $55 million next year, but only 5 of that's guaranteed. So they could still be on a year-to-year situation with him and maybe go to Ty Simpson next year if he's ready. No, you're not buying it. If he's ready? You're not buying it.
I don't know if he's going to be ready next year. I'd rather have Matthew Stafford. Even if Matthew Stafford is diminished next year, I'd rather have him than Ty Simpson.
We'll see. In the meantime, the Rams hope to win the Super Bowl and make all of us shut up. Still to come. No Lamar, no. Amon-Ra has been part of a pretty good Lions offense in Detroit, but that offense sputtered a little bit in 2025. Couple of areas where they saw the biggest drop-off. Third down offense, they went from 4th in 2024 to 20th last year, and pass blocking dropped from 12th all the way down to 31st. So they were the second worst pass blocking team in the NFL, which is the lowest they've ranked in 5 seasons under Dan Campbell. So, Mina, when you look at the Lions and this offense, and it didn't do what we expected it to do last year, how much of that do you put on the offensive line?
A lot, a great deal. So Jared Goff, we've talked about this a long time over the course of his career. He is a quarterback where there's a pretty big gap between his performance when he's kept clean versus under pressure. And people say, well, that's true of any quarterback. I would say it's more of him. However, I would also add that very few quarterbacks, I think, would have thrived behind that Lions offensive line at points last season. You mentioned their pass block win rate. Something I'll highlight is Goff faced the 5th highest rate of quick pressures of any high-volume quarterbacks in the NFL. Compare that to the prior season when he was 20th, and I think you can see the single biggest culprit for the struggles in the passing game, and it affected everything. His time to throw was way down because he knew he was getting pressured. The average at the target declined as well, both career lows in Detroit. So to me, that has to be the focus. It's been the focus for Detroit this offseason, obviously in the draft and some additions in free agency. They know their offensive line needs to get better because last season, I would say it was the single biggest problem with this offense.
Yeah, that also infected the run game as well, which was so impactful for them in earlier seasons. They still had their explosives here and there with Jahmyr Gibbs, but they dropped from 6th in success rate over the prior 2 seasons to 25th last season. And when you have that run game drop off, it not only does it mean you're not doing well on first down, it makes your third downs harder as well. They had the shortest average distance to get the first down, and then third down in 23 and 24. That was 21st last season. So Jared Goff, who, like you said, has a huge gap between how he does against pressure and when he's kept clean, was facing more obvious passing situations on fewer running situations on third down. The Lions love to run the ball on third and medium when they can. Jared Goff was in those spots, the offensive line was in those spots, and you saw more pass pressure and more drives fail as a result.
Yeah, when you look at the Lions' biggest problem last year, the irony is it was a strength a couple years ago. They built their entire franchise through the trenches, and then all of a sudden you lose the best center in football to retirement. You have injuries all over the place, and all of a sudden it's a weakness. And that happens very, very quickly in the NFL. Last year, if you look at the number of combinations, lineup combinations in the offensive line that played over 50 snaps, they were just about the most unstable offensive line in football. You saw it. Bill mentioned it earlier. The amount of chunk plays on the ground, they go from 6th to not even in the top 20 last year. That's an offensive line stat to me. You think about the violence they were able to inflict on defenses 5-10 yards down the field in the run game. It just wasn't there. It wasn't the identity that Dan Campbell wants. Dan Campbell was a heck of a blocker when he played. I mean, we just saw it. There's no. We were looking at a low lights thing of Jared Goff getting his teeth kicked in. Didn't look like we were about to run out of plays where that happened.
I think they had to cut that down. Yeah.
He was under assault the entire season last year. Cade Mays, Blake Miller, both of those guys will be day one starters. This will get addressed. They'll be fine this year.
And they're talking about moving Penei Sewell from right tackle to left tackle as well. He did play half his games at right and half at left in 2021, so they feel like that should work. Up next on NFL Live, after bringing back Aaron Rodgers and bringing some new faces into town, there is out this week, and in case you haven't been paying attention to NFL Live or any of our other shows, Aaron Rodgers is back in action. And his new teammate Michael Pittman was asked if he was surprised to see Rodgers out there this week with the team.
Partially not. I mean, I had the hope that he was coming back, and I had a good feeling about it, but you never know. I mean, Aaron's going to do what Aaron wants to do, right? So, but definitely happy to have him back for sure.
Bill, the Steelers traded for Pittman before I guess they were sure about Rodgers coming back, but you think it's a good fit with Rodgers and the Steelers offense?
Yes and no. You said two. It's a good fit for Aaron Rodgers. I don't know that it's a good fit for the Steelers offense. So let me explain. Aaron Rodgers last year, as our Kevin Clark mentioned earlier in the show, threw the shortest average pass of anybody in football. The only guy under 6 air yards per attempt a year ago. Michael Pittman, 61st out of 68 qualifying receivers in terms of air yards per target. So a guy who is catching underneath throws from a quarterback who throws a lot of underneath passes. That's a good fit. But what the Steelers really needed is an explosive downfield player. They were 30th last year in explosive play rate on dropbacks, which Aaron Rodgers was making the majority of. So I don't know if Pittman is a great fit for the Steelers offense and what they needed, even if he might be a good fit for the passes Aaron Rodgers wants to throw.
Pittman averaged the 5th fewest yards per reception last year among the 38 players who had at least 100 targets. In case you missed it, new Dolphins quarterback Malik Willis was asked this week about the Jalen Waddle trade to Denver. He didn't hold back.
It was unfortunate, for sure, to say the least. That's a really good player, and I would have loved to play with him, but that's above my pay grade. That's out of my hands.
Mina, his pay grade's fairly high, but when you look at this Dolphins roster now, where's the production going to come from?
Yeah, it's above his pay grade, but it does make me wonder whether he knew about the trade or would have been willing to sign in Miami if he had known what his receiver corps was going to look like, because quite candidly, it is amongst the worst in the NFL. And for this offense to be successful, I really think they need one of the young players, maybe Chris Bell, who they drafted this year, to hit. But perhaps more importantly, the run game has to be one of the best in the league. And I do think that's feasible, because this was a rushing attack that's been very good over the last few years. Granted, you lose Mike McDaniel, your play caller, but the offensive line is one that has started to improve a great deal. Obviously, they still have Devon Achane. And now you add a quarterback who is one of the most dynamic rushing threats in the league. So that two-headed attack that in the backfield, I think, could be a real problem for defenses. I just fear that they won't have to account for the passing attack as much.
Yeah, Dolphins locking up Devon Achane on a new deal, signing Malik Willis in free agency. Looks like they're planning to build it all out of that run game for a while at least. In case you missed